All right, man, peace. So, they had this very interesting segment featuring Jay-Z, Chris Paul, a fitness enthusiast named Angela Davis. And there were some very interesting photos that were in this segment. So I'm going to let them talk their way through it. I'm going to chime in here and there.
Matter of fact, if I told you that a big-time rapper and a huge NBA star were hanging out during the off-season, what would you think those two guys would be doing together?
They were at the strip club.
Strip club, maybe at the beach.
Or maybe at some type of pansexual orgy, or some form of blood sacrifice worship, something along those lines. It wouldn't shock me.
We just saw James Harden hanging out with Meek Mill. Chicks everywhere.
Yeah,
in Miami,
so many
yachting
chicks.
up and stuff like that.
Yeah, awesome.
That's why I call him James Hardhead. This guy's one of the biggest idiots in professional sports, James Harden. All right. And he seemed to me to be the victim of some form of mind control in that last game against San Antonio. Just a guess. Like I said, I stated before, Steph Curry seemed to have been the victim of some form of mind control manipulation in last year's finals, particularly in Game 3. I mean, just watching that game, that last game against the Spurs, something was up with this guy. But like I said, anybody who affiliates with the Kardashian witch coven, they give themselves up to some type of spiritual abduction. But it is what it is. We'll cover that later.
Awesome. Definitely something like that.
I'm about to show you a picture of Jay-Z and Chris Paul.
Now look at that chain that Jay-Z has on. When I saw this segment, I said, wow, this guy's blatant with it. It's amazing to me the things that people claim are conspiracy theories when these people do it in plain sight. Look at the chain that he has on. That symbol is known as the Cross of Lorraine. For those of you who don't know what the Cross of Lorraine is, that's a symbol of what's known as Hermetic worship or Hermeticism. Hermes, like I've stated numerous times in the past, is just another way to say the man Cush. All right, the man who taught a lot of the principles of what's known today as Luciferianism to mankind after the flood. All right, that symbol is known as the Cross of Lorraine. It was popularized in Europe during the Crusades by the Knights Templar. For those of you who don't know who the Knights Templar were, they were an order of knights, so-called black men. For those of you who don't know, the Knights were so-called black men who fought in the Crusades. The Crusades were a series of wars that were fought to take back what was known as the Holy Land, the land of Israel, by the blacks, so-called blacks who were ruling in Europe. They wanted to take the land back because that's where they came from. All right, so they waged the Crusades to try to take the land back from the Ottoman Turks, who were Caucasian Muslims. All right. In the process of trying to wage that war to get a series of wars to get the land back, they stumbled upon a lot of occultic practices that they were indoctrinated by and they brought back to Europe. One of them was known as Hermeticism, all right, which is what we know today as the worship of quote unquote Baphomet, or as he was known in the ancient world, Pan, all right, the goat god. All right, the Cross of Lorraine is a symbol that is used for Hermeticism, aka Pan worship, the goat god. All right, that's what Jay-Z's down with. It was rejuvenated in the 20th century by a Caucasian man named Aleister Crowley. He had a organization known as OTO. I believe it stood for Ordo Templi Orientis, if I remember correctly. He was originally a member of an occultic organization known as the Golden Dawn, and before that, he was in Theosophy, if I remember correctly. He was taught by a woman named Madame Blavatsky, all right, who was the main top witch in the 1800s, who taught Aleister Crowley. She also taught guys like Mahatma Gandhi. She taught Frank Baum, who wrote The Wizard of Oz. She taught Lewis Carroll, who wrote, I believe he wrote Alice in the Wonderland, if I remember correctly. All right. She taught a lot of guys. J.M. Barrie, who wrote Peter Pan. Like I said before, Peter Pan is an allusion to the goat god, the god of pederasty. All right. So, all this stuff is connected. But yeah, that's known as the Cross of Lorraine. That was brought back to Europe by the Knights Templar. All right. Like I said, they were a group of black men so-called black men who went to go try to get the land of Israel back. They became indoctrinated into a lot of occultic beliefs. They brought that back to Europe with them. They also were the group that started what's known as the banking system. All right. They got permission from the Pope, from the Vatican to lend out money on usury, what's known as usury, or basically meaning lending for profit, lending on interest. All right. And one of the reasons why a lot of the monarchies in France and other parts of Europe turned against them was because they owed them money. So they took advantage of a lot of the allegations that they were worshiping. They were engaging in occultic practices. They took advantage of those rumors, which a lot of them were true, to get rid of them, to get rid of the order, the Knights Templar order, because they owed them money. All right. The king owed them money. I believe it was Philip IV. He was, we'll probably go into this when I finally get to the history series about the so-called black rulership in France. All right. He was a member of the House of Anjou, if I remember correctly. All right. You had the House of Valois and the House of Anjou, which took them over. A man named Rene Anjou, who popularized the use of the cross of Lorraine. All right. Which is in dedication to the goat god Pan, or as he's known today, Baphomet. All right, now since we're talking about Jay-Z, I happen to have just been watching NBA TV here. They were just going over the old finals game from last year. And they're going through these celebrities in the crowd, and they're going to flash to Jay-Z, who obviously knows that a camera's on him. And he's going to make a concerted effort to show you who his God is.
Serena, the NBA's Rookie of the Year, Karl Anthony Towns of the Timberwolves, Indians manager Terry Francona, our own Tracy McGrady, your former player Jeff, crazy basketball fan Jamie Foxx, and huge.
Yeah, now you see what he did there? That hand signal didn't even make any sense. He's acting like he's pointing somewhere, but he's throwing up the horn sign for Pan. Right? Out of nowhere. He's acting like he's pointing somewhere, but why do you have just your index finger and your pinky up with your ring finger and your middle finger down? All right? He was signaling the camera for those who are in the know. All right, I'm going to rewind it one more time.
Huge JVG fan. Francona, our own Tracy McGrady, your former player Jeff, crazy basketball fan Jamie.
There you go again. You see that? He started out with him looking over his left shoulder, trying to act like he's motioning towards somebody, but he's really just signaling the viewership, those who are in the know, that yes, he's a believer in Pan, right? The so-called goat god, or as he's known conventionally as the Baphomet. All right, that's why he was wearing the cross of Lorraine. All right. So all this stuff goes way back. It's relatively deep. But let's continue on.
Paul,
Ooh, I can't wait for the turn up here.
Getting it at Soul Cycle. Look at these two dads. Look at Hov and Chris Paul dadded up at Soul Cycle.
Now, Chris Paul, he's another one who I'm pretty sure, is a adherent to the god Pan. Why do I say that? Because most of his State Farm commercials involve multiple personality disorder, right? You ever notice his commercials are pretty much like the, what's the name of that movie that Brad Pitt and Ed Norton did? Oh, Fight Club. Remember Fight Club? Ed Norton's character thought that Brad Pitt was somebody else, but it was really just a different personality. Right? The State Farm commercials are basically about having multiple personalities. Right? Chris Paul, Cliff Paul. And then when he's not promoting having multiple personalities, he's promoting cross-dressing, right? Which is also symptomatic or indicative of a belief in Hermeticism, which is just and was known as androgyny, right? Meaning having both male and female parts, right? Like the so-called god Baphomet, the goat god. He has both male and female parts. The coming together of opposites, as above, so below. All right. That's why he has that idiot DeAndre Jordan dressing up as a 7-foot-tall woman. All right, in the commercial. If you're Chris Paul, why would you want to have that imagery in a commercial? You're supposed to be a family man, right? What are you really doing? What's that banana boat really about? What's the banana in the banana boat that you and LeBron and D Wade and Carmelo Anthony all hopping on?
Soul Cycle together. There was a Soul Cycle Wednesday. I took a class by Angela Davis, who is one of the most popular Soul Cycle.
Wasn't she like a big track and field athlete?
She was a track and field star. She was a member of the...
Now, this chick, Angela Davis, I believe she's most likely a pansexual as well. I think that she's supposedly married, but look at the shirt she has on. It says the force is female. Once again, in those witchcraft circles, they worship the feminine principle. They worship the mother goddess. All right. Most of these liberal black women, they have low self-esteem, so they have to try to project themselves as goddesses. Right. These so-called black men who are into pan worship or the worship of Hermes, aka the Baphomet, they worship the woman. All right. They worship her as a mother goddess. They have no problem conforming to that belief system. All right. Now, I see Jay-Z also has a sun worship sweatshirt on. I doubt if that's, I mean, it could just be a happenstance, but I doubt it. All right. But we're going to go a little deeper into, we're going to go a little further into something that Jay-Z did in another segment.
Member of the U.S. track and field team. She's been there for people like Oprah.
There she goes, throwing up the so-called peace sign for Pan. All right. She reminds me a lot of that other demon, Jada Pinkett Smith, who also is a worshiper of the god Pan. Right. Remember, pansexual, have sex with everything. That's why, what is it that the Smiths kids say? That they have no gender. Right. They're genderless. People think that they're just pulling that out of their backside. They're not. They're getting taught that by their parents. All right. The Smith children, Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith's children, are monarch children. OK, and we'll probably go into that in the future. Will Smith shows you that his daughter's a monarch child in that film that he did that was based off of the Charlton Heston Omega Man movie. You know, where Will Smith is the last man on the earth. Him and that German Shepherd dog. I don't know why the name of the movie is escaping me right now. But his daughter was also in the film. And she says a lot of things that show you that she is a monarch child. But so is the son. That's why the son walks around dressed like a woman. Whenever you guys see that, you guys got to understand something. All these people in Hollyweird or the entertainment industry, they all worship the god Pan. They have to. All right. Like I said, the so-called peace sign is the V sign, or the V sign for victory, that was popularized by Winston Churchill, who was a druid priest. Right. That's nothing but that all that signifies is the worship of the god Pan. The fingers represent sexuality. All right. Pansexuality. One finger in the vagina, the other one in the anus. That's what it represents. All right. Like I said before, her shirt says the force is female. All right. That shows you that she has a lot of self-esteem issues, that she has to promote that. OK, now I tried to do a little bit of research on her to see what I could find. Supposedly she's married. So, you know, I haven't found anything concrete, so I'll leave it alone as far as that is concerned for now. But I see that she's getting a lot of support from Oprah. We know Oprah is a pansexual, allegedly. All right. And I see she getting a lot of support from Kelly Rowland also, who's another pansexual hiding in the closet behind that beard, that guy that she claims is her child's father. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. Let's continue on.
All kinds of people have taken her class and stuff like that. And she gave the class to them. They were in there together. And there he is. You have a Hove and Chris Paul dadding it up.
I love this. I love this because when you described it the way you described it, I thought we were going to see some crazy video. And don't get me wrong, I love seeing all that. I love seeing all the girls. But this is really cool to see these two guys hanging out, two huge stars, and just getting some exercise in.
Zoom out.
I'm sure they hang out a lot. All right. I'm sure that they're brothers in numerous ways.
Zoom out on that picture again. Zoom out. I want to see Jay-Z's full body. Show me. Okay, that right there is an example of Jay-Z dressing like he thinks the young kids should dress.
You think?
He's got tights on underneath his shorts.
He looks a little ridiculous, right?
He doesn't look ridiculous. That's just somebody's daddy right there.
Like, literally.
Now, speaking of Chris Paul, people might be wondering, is Chris Paul working out so that he can be shipped down to San Antonio?
This might be one of his last days in L.A.
Right, the rumors are that he's going to end up being a Spur, that they have to break up the Clippers, and he's going to be the chip to go.
I believe that he will try to get to the Spurs. I believe that his last-ditch effort is going to be to try to get to that top mind control handler, Greg Popovich. All right? Because Chris Paul is most likely under the programming. He's most likely a MK Ultra athlete. So a lot of times these guys, when they can't get the chip in certain places, then they run to a top MK handler coach and see if they can take him to the next level.
We talked to Doc Rivers about that. Is Chris Paul gonna move? We got him out in LA last night. Check out what Doc had to say.
Gotta ask Chris Paul, all this talk of going to San Antonio. You gonna keep him here in Los Angeles? Keep him with the Clippers? Absolutely.
Yeah, there you go.
Short and sweet, but here's the thing. Doc Rivers is the president of the Clippers.
Yeah.
He is the guy who would make the decision on whether the ship... Right. So if he says no, Chris Paul stay a Clipper.
Or
he's lying to us and doesn't want to show his part.
Or we're gonna turn on the TV in a couple of days of blockbuster train. Chris Paul straight up for Kawhi Leonard or something like that.
Well, I believe that Chris Paul is going to try to force his way out, and if he can't, most likely the commissioner of the NBA will step in and try to help him get out of LA and try to get him to San Antonio. Remember, Chris Paul was originally going to go to the Lakers, and what's his name stepped in? David Stern stepped in and orchestrated the trade for him to go to the Clippers, which is the first time in NBA history that I can remember anything like that happening. So Chris Paul has been a top asset for a long time. All right, he's been a top asset in the NBA for a long time. If you guys remember, just to go further into that theme of MK Ultra athletes and Monarch Children athletes, they utilize something called predictive programming. And like I said, State Farm, the State Farm insurance company, they're a major Luciferian organization, allegedly a major Luciferian corporation. If you remember, there was a commercial that they had about 3-4 years ago, and it utilized something called predictive programming. In the commercial, they had Chris Paul with his two personalities going down the escalator, and they had Steph Curry with his two personalities coming up the escalator to symbolize that they had already have things outlined for Steph Curry to rise and Chris Paul to decline. I don't know if you guys remember that commercial. But anyway, peace.